Welcome to the 1871 podcast. And obviously, it wasn't a very good weekend for Reading, to say the least. So we'll be discussing that on this episode. And we'll also be looking at the Royals' slim survival hopes. And they are looking very slim now. So we'll come to that. But the 1871 podcast has something for you this week that we can hope will lift the spirits a little bit for Reading fans. And the reason for that is because we've got not one, not two, but not even three, but four Reading legends for you on the 1871 podcast this week. So we'll shortly be speaking to former Reading midfielder Simon Osborne, who is still considered to be one of the greatest Reading midfielders of all time. And then on tomorrow's episode, we'll be joined by Reading's all-time top appearance maker, Martin Hicks. And then on Thursday, we're joined by one of Reading's greatest goal scorers, if not the greatest goal scorer for Reading of all time, Trevor Senior. And I said we've got four Reading legends for you this week, and that's because on tonight's episode we welcome back our co-host Dylan Kerr. So looking forward to speaking to Dylan. And that's not all. Coming soon on the 1871 podcast, we're hoping to be joined by two more Reading legends, Adam Lafondra and Phil Parkinson. We haven't got those confirmed yet, but they've both said yes, so we're looking to get the dates booked in for those. So looking forward to that. So that's all coming up on the 1871 podcast. And talking of Phil Parkinson, congratulations to Phil and his Wrexham side for winning the National League title and securing promotion to League Two with a very impressive 111 points. So congratulations to Phil. And staying on the subject of Reading legends, before we speak to Simon Osborne and before we get into the current situation with Reading, let's come to Dylan Kerr, because as well as being a Reading legend in the Hall of Fame as a player, he's also a legend as a manager. So statistically, Dylan is currently one of the most successful head coaches in world football, with 7 trophies in 3 countries since 2014. He's saved 4 clubs from relegation in the South African Premier Division, and he's taken his current side, Marumo Gallants, out of the South African Premier Division relegation zone. And on Sunday, Gallants beat last season's Egyptian Premier League runners-up Pyramids 1-0 to book a place in the semi-finals of the CAF Confederation Cup, which is Africa's equivalent of the Europa League. So, Dylan, I could see your head getting a bit bigger. So firstly, congratulations to you. And secondly, a lot of Reading fans think that you should be the next Reading manager. So tell us, what's your secret?
Ooh, crikey, that's $1 million question, that secret. Secret's just, as probably Ozzy will, confirm, it's just, I just love the game. I just love playing football, watching football, and I just bring this mentality of enjoyment to the game wherever I've been. Especially, it's always been to keep teams up, and this is no different. Even though it's 5 games less than I had to the previous 4 teams, and we've had this horrendous fixture list where tomorrow it's our 8th game in 26 days. And we've travelled to Egypt, and we've also played CAF games and Premier League games in Bloemfontein, which is a 10-hour drive from where we are based in Polokwane. So we've done a lot of travelling, and it's just been amazing. And the fact that we beat Pyramids, who, as you said, last year were runners up, they're 3rd in the Premier League in Egypt as we speak, and we weren't fancied at all. And the Egyptians, after the game, you could see they were absolutely devastated that they'd actually been beaten, and we've now got a game tomorrow, which is probably the biggest game of our season, against Manchester United, who are bottom of the league, 3 points behind us. If we win tomorrow, we cannot get relegated. We're still in with a chance of, possibly in the relegation playoffs. But if we win tomorrow, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic achievement for where we've been in this past month, just alone.
Yeah, we'll wish you well with that, Dylan, and for the rest of the season, for those remaining games, and of course in the semi-finals of the CAF Confederation Cup. Excuse me. And talking of legends, let's now bring in our other 1871 podcast co-host now, the voice of BBC Radio Berkshire, keeps getting invited to represent the 1871 podcast to talk about Reading. So, Johnny Hunt, hello, how are you?
Sorry, sorry, my little one was just in the background, so I muted myself.
Okay.
Yeah, no, brilliant, Dylan. Congratulations, mate. Keep up the good work.
All right, and Johnny, before we speak to Simon, let's talk about Reading. What did you make of the draw against Wigan on Saturday? You were there, weren't you? Flew over England for that game.
Yeah. Sorry.
So tell us what you thought of the game.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a little one here. It's just very importantly with the LOL dolls. So this is a tough job for the day, putting dolls together.
Multitasking.
Multitasking, mate. There's no end to my ability, except doing this one. Look, it was a great day to go and see football, see people. But the game itself was, I can't believe I'm doing this. It was huff and puff. I can't do it. Just 2 seconds. Come back to me in a second, mate. Hold on.
Yeah, I'll come back to you, Johnny.
Yeah,
as he sometimes is, he's multitasking with 1871 podcast and childcare. So we'll come back to you in a second. So look, here's how things stand for Reading, and let's look at what happened at the weekend. So Reading drew 1-1 with Wigan. Yaku Mite got a stoppage time equaliser. Obviously, we needed to win that game, really. So a bit of a blow, to say the least. Then on Sunday, we were hoping Cardiff would do us a favour. Huddersfield beat them 2-1 at Cardiff. So that didn't help Reading. And then on Monday, yesterday, Rotherham beat Middlesbrough, who had 10 men, 1-0. So Rotherham are safe. So it's between Huddersfield and Reading now. Huddersfield are in the driving seat. And if Huddersfield beat Sheffield United on Thursday, Reading are relegated. Or get a draw. So the only chance of Reading staying up now is if Huddersfield lose at home to Sheffield United on Thursday. If not, they're down. If they do lose to Sheffield United, then it goes to the last game. Andy Carroll's back for Reading. It might not make a difference at all, but it's Huddersfield v Reading on Monday in the last game. So here's how it stands. Here's what needs to happen for Reading to have any chance of staying up. So if Huddersfield avoid defeat on Thursday against Sheffield United, Reading are relegated. If Huddersfield lose on Thursday and Reading beat them on Monday, Reading are safe. And that's because Huddersfield are currently 3 points ahead of Reading with a -18 goal difference, and Reading have a -20 goal difference. So if Huddersfield lose their last 2 games, their goal difference will be -20 or worse. And a win for Reading against Huddersfield means that Reading would be on -19 or better. So basically, if Huddersfield lose their next 2 games, Reading are safe. If Huddersfield get a point from their next 2 games, Reading are down. So that's the long and the short of it, Johnny. And we've got you back now, haven't we?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, look, nobody's doing us a favour, are they, at the minute? And it's down to Sheffield United now, who've got some record. I think I saw it. If they beat, it does some record that Warnock had at Sheffield United. So there's a big strong clutching out there that they'll win. Then we've actually got to go and win, which is not actually that likely as well at the minute. Saturday was okay. Like there's just not enough quality there, and you can't beat a bottom team for a game like that. It shows you where you're at. It's not from the players' lack of effort or willingness. It's just we don't have the ability.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Johnny. And I think obviously 6-point deduction. Reading have had injuries, and Andy Carroll's been suspended. Excuse me. But I think it does come down to lack of quality. We have had not a bounce really, but Noel Hunt, it's been a bit more positive since he's been in charge, but ultimately it doesn't look like it's going to be good enough. I think even, I think probably the chances are it'll be all over on Thursday, and we go to Huddersfield needing a win. I'm not sure, Huddersfield are going to slip up and let Reading in the back door, so to speak. although it'd be nice for Andy Carroll to get a last-minute winner, send Huddersfield down, keep Reading up. But let's see. I want to bring in Simon Osborne now. So, Simon, welcome to the 1871 podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, gents. How are we? You all good?
Yeah, and nice to see you in your back garden there. I think you're on a job somewhere in London, aren't you, at the minute?
I am. Yes, I'm in a job in Chelsea at the moment, so just here. So excuse the background. It's quite nice. It's reasonably quiet, and it's not sunny, but we can live with this. It's not raining, so that's a bonus of how it's been lately. So it's all good. But while we're here, congratulations, Dill. You're doing well again for a change. You may get a job back. You may get a job back in England at some point, but let's just stay to the merry-go-round. But we won't get into that. That's another separate podcast. That one.
That'll be a job working for you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, look, Simon, we do want to talk about your time at Reading. You were on in Series 1 and talked a lot about that. But before we chat about your memories of your time at Reading, and as I say, regarded by many Reading fans as one of the greatest midfielders in the club's history. No two ways about that. Just wanted to get your take on the current situation at Reading, because during your time at the club, it was just such a dynamic team to watch as a Reading fan. You had so much success. You were at Reading for one season before you moved on to QPR. But that was such a fantastic season. Obviously, it didn't end well in that playoff final. But Reading have sort of gone through some changes since you left. So John Medeski, obviously the magnificent work that he did to get Reading up into the Premier League. And then, other owners have come in and it's gone downhill. And it looks like this might be the end of the current chapter for Reading and very possible relegation to League One. What do you make of what's happened in recent years for Reading and how that's culminated in what's happened this season?
I just think, you kind of mentioned it there, the new owners, the instability, there's a lot of changing. I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's a clear direction. I almost feel like, you're still around sort of supporters of football club and talking to people. And it just feels like there's almost a breakaway from the fans and the players now. There just doesn't seem to be that connection. And for such a great club, and obviously with what Sir John did at the time, and with the stadium and everything else with there, it just feels like everybody's sort of sitting there going, it's too big a club to go down. Well, Wolves have done it, other clubs have done it that I've played for and gone down those divisions. And I just think at the moment, there's obviously staved it off last year, had a decent start this season. Everyone's a bit of optimism maybe, but I think the bottom line is the quality of the football and the quality of the player at the moment is obviously not up to scratch. Paul Ince came in and got the job from last year. A bit of a strange appointment at the time, not been in football for a while. And a lot of people were sceptical. He kept the club up, and his season started reasonably well. So I think that changed a few perceptions of people. But since sort of the early part of the season, it's been pretty dire. And talking to people, I think fans can accept some results, but they certainly can't accept some performances if they don't feel that the players are giving their all or playing for the badge. And I think sometimes you could probably throw that towards the players of what they've been getting at. But again, there's lots of other things that come into a football club. Dylan will tell you more about that, the politics behind the scenes and all that does filter down into dressing rooms. There's no two ways about that. And maybe that's what's happened. And somewhere along the line, there's going to be this is going to culminate. Huddersfield have bought in an experienced Mr. Warnock again to do his little bit of magic, and he's dragged them up to where they are now because they were kind of dead and buried 4 weeks ago. And again, it's quite a sign. It's how he's changed that football club. I don't think he'd have gone in there and done a lot different. Obviously Noel's come in and done his little bits and tried to galvanise the squad in a very difficult time. Neil's probably just gone in and brought a bit of a fresh impetus in there. He's freshened it up. He's probably made it quite a chirpy place, and they've picked up results. And it's very difficult when you're on that sort of downward spiral to drag yourselves back out of it. So it's going to be tough. Sheffield United, obviously, I think will probably beat Huddersfield on Thursday. Purely, again, I think there is some record of I can't think of his points or promotion, as Johnny mentioned, but that just drags it down to the very last game of the season where it's certainly the pressure's going to be on for both clubs, but I think more so for Reading, really, away from home and going up against the side that's above them and needing a win.
And what's your gut feeling? Do you think a lot of fans, Reading fans, seem to be resigned to relegation now? A lot of Reading fans saying, "Oh, that'd be a disaster." But obviously, some of the greatest seasons in Reading's history over the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years have been coming up from that level and going into what's now the Championship. Obviously, Reading did it, and then you came in, and that Jamie Curitan goal that got Reading promoted. Those are some of the greatest memories that Reading fans have. And ultimately, you want to see a winning team. You don't want to be battling against relegation. So kind of if we do go down, yes, it might take us a long time to get back up again, but you would hope that Reading can sort of have a reset and then maybe get a bit of momentum, because that team that Dylan was part of, that won the league and went up into what is now the Championship, and then you joined, carried on that momentum, and any other season would have gone straight up to the Premier League. So what are your thoughts about, what's your gut feeling? Do you think Reading can do it? And if they do get relegated, what does the sort of the short-term future look like for Reading, do you think, Simon?
Well, again, I think it's if you've got a direction. If it's no point planning for relegation right now because you're still within, a chance of staying up. But there's certainly got to be some changes made around the football club to bring that back in. And if the worst does happen, they go down again. What are you going to do about it? What's the philosophy? Where are you going to? What kind of manager? You've got to make all those decisions. Are you going to look to bring in a younger squad and bring some players in through the academy, which Reading have had pretty good success with along the time? So there's a massive change that needs to happen. And again, as I said to you, I'm using Wolves as a perfect example. They dropped down 2 divisions, had a bit of a reset, went back into it, and then jumped back up and are now in the Premiership and pretty much established in there. So it's not that it can't happen. And there is a lot of doom and gloom in relegation. Don't get me wrong, it's happened to me before. But the direction going forward needs to be clear. And at the moment, I think there isn't a direction. I don't see a direction. I don't see a direction behind the scenes, and I don't see a direction at the moment. And that's not a disrespect to Noel. Coming as a caretaker at a late stage is not an easy thing to do. And I just think that somewhere along the line, it needs to be clear, precise, and map out the next sort of 3 or 4 years of where they're going to be and where they're going to get to. Is it a straight bounce back, or are we going to look to rebuild, regroup, and within the next 2 seasons get ourselves back in the Championship and look to push on? Because there's such a divide now between the Premiership and the Championship, and then again there's even a divide now between that Championship and League One. So it's understanding why it's happened, looking at the reasons behind it, and then trying to push on from that, I think.
Yeah, Simon, I've got one more question for you, then I'm going to bring Dylan and Johnny in. Looking ahead, so obviously a bit depends on whether we stay in the Championship or whether we're going to be in League One, but looking ahead to the manager situation at Reading, Noel Hunt, inexperienced manager, he's come in on an interim basis. It's a bit better than it was under Paul Ince, but that's to do with the spirit. You can see a bit of a better kind of spirit around the club. There's a slight bit of hope for Reading fans. He seems to be a more positive person than Paul Ince, so that's had a little bit of an impact. But in terms of the type of manager that Reading need to take them forward, whether it's Championship or League One, I mean, we're ambassadors for Dylan Kerr, and that's partly because, we like Dylan, he's on the podcast. But if you look at his record, yes, it's in other countries, but he's been successful wherever he's gone, whether it's winning titles, winning trophies, keeping teams up. Take away anything else. But if you look at his track record, do Reading need somebody like that? I mean, John O'Shea's been mentioned. He's very inexperienced as a manager, and look, it's another Man United player that's got a connection with Reading this time. But would somebody like John O'Shea, seems to be one of the favourites, wouldn't you want somebody like Dylan Kerr, who's got that track record, albeit in other countries?
Listen, we're biased, to be honest here. We are biased, and we're biased because he's achieved things in other countries. The problem you get within this country, obviously I'm not within football anymore, I coach on an academy in that city, is that sometimes you need to be given a chance to gain some experience, which I understand. It's a catch-22 situation. You're inexperienced until you get experience. But yeah, this is the whole thing about it. You need to instill a philosophy and you need to understand what you're going to do. Would Dylan Kerr be a good manager at Reading? I'm sure he wouldn't he'd do a good job, and he wouldn't be as bad as some of the other managers. I know that for a fact because I know what Dylan's like as a person, and I know what he's like as a manager, and I'm sure he'd instill that, and he'd certainly bring the fun factor back to the football club and re-engage the fans with the players. That's a given. The problem you've got is that you can't get past the bureaucracy and the people that sit in front of these. That Dylan will tell you a million times on this podcast. I bet he doesn't get response after times if he applies for a job. Yet the same merry-go-round goes on, and we go back through the same old. I'm not saying people are bad managers. They have, you get sacked, you get another job. It's great, no problem at all. It's the only job in the world, to be fair, where you can get sacked, get paid off, and get another job within 4 weeks. It's brilliant. But the problem you've got is until someone takes that gamble, it's very, very difficult. And Dylan will tell you that, to get himself back in the doorstep there. People like Phil Parker's in this world who's been around. He'll be talked about again. But at the moment, would he leave Wrexham, with all due respect, to go to Reading Football Club? I don't think he would. Do you?
No, I don't. I'm going to bring in Dylan now. I mean, Dylan, you've already said that you'd love to manage Reading, and we'd love to see you, swim across the sea and down the River Thames and all those things that you've promised if you do get the chance. But you're pretty pessimistic about it actually happening, aren't you?
I just like Ozzy's just said, it's scary to figure out that you get rewarded in this business, especially in England and Scotland, for failure. And I don't get how a manager that's failed not once, twice, three, sometimes 4 or 5 times, chairman get kind of, I don't know if it's hoodwinked or caught up in the moment with the name, that this coach is going to do something different. Going to do something better. Okay, maybe once or twice, yeah. Because some coaches have been fired and then they've gone on to do bigger and better things. But 3, 4, 5 times, you're thinking, well, what's they thinking? I'm not saying that I'm going to be the next Reading manager. I'm not going to say that I'm the best man for the job. What I'm saying is that it'd be nice to actually speak to a club, to actually put my point of view over, and then if they say no, you're not got the job, then you know that you've not done a good job in your presentation and in your interview. So I remember when Mark McGee got the Reading job, Mr. Medeski or Sir John, was impressed with what he had to say, and he was a rookie. As Graham Denton said, he was still playing at Newcastle, and he came and retired and came to Reading and did very, very well. And like I say, it's I'll keep trying. The day I stop trying, then that's the day when I'll walk away from football, and I can't see that ever happening. But as well as that, I know that sometimes you get disappointed when you don't receive a reply or you don't receive an acknowledgement that thank you for your application letter, as they used to do in the olden days. It's just cast aside and put in the bin. So yeah, whoever they appoint, I see that Richie Wellens is now favourite on Twitter. That apparently he's the next man lined up for Reading Football Club. Brilliant. You're not going to knock that. But again, if they do get relegated, they've got to rebuild, get back into the Championship ASAP. And if they stay in the Premier League, if they stay in the Championship, then they've got to do an even bigger reconstruction and make sure that they don't be in the position that they're in this year. So, it's difficult, for me as a coach to see Reading Football Club where it is, and to go back to the to League One where me and Ozzy actually started at Reading Football Club. It would be. It's not too good. It's not too good for the club.
Yeah, Johnny, I'll bring you in now. What do you want to ask Simon, either about the current side or his time at Reading, and maybe some of the differences between, back then and now?
I was going to say both Dylan and Simon, if Dylan's listening. Like back then, obviously, like now, do you think there's so much money in football that people don't gamble on younger managers? They go, "Oh, we'll try the Steve Bruce's because it's better the devil you know, it's tried and tested." Whereas when you had Mark McGee, Colin Lee, it was very much a different expectation. What do you think?
Dylan probably knows better than I do about that, Johnny, if I'm honest with you. But I can see now that chairman and people that make the decisions will be. I think it was somebody was talking on TalkSport, and there are other radio programs as well, just to let you know that. And they were Tim Sherwood, it was, by the way, was speaking about it, and he said people get blown away by presentations and all these buzzwords about transitions and half spaces and pocket, where football's not changed. Football hasn't changed. The formations are still the same. The players are still the same. There's just better science to it now, and it's actually, it's changed a lot for the good. But there are some fundamentals from the older generation of football that have changed, and it's different. And as I said to you now, it's just these chairmen will go, am I going to take a chance? Can I gamble with a young manager, or can I gamble with an inexperienced manager? And I think they're more liable to err on the side of caution nowadays because they're answering to other people. Whereas, Sir John Medeski and Graham Denton were the main men who basically went, listen, he's inexperienced. Where are we going to go? What current is out there on the market? Let's give it a go. And
Yeah.
it worked. And I think that's the difference now, isn't it? It's, you need your A license, you need this. And there's the guy in France, I can't think of his name at the moment, who's coaching in League One, who has no UEFA A, who's doing a fantastic job, and the club gets fined 30 grand every. Now, that's a massive, bold decision by the football club to do that. But he must have impressed them, and he's obviously a very good coach.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, as I said to you, the coaches nowadays or managers nowadays are a lot of different. There's a lot more going on at a football club than back in the day of Mark McGee and Colin Lee. There's so much more to it, and Dylan again would be able to sort of tell you more about that. But I just think the fundamentals are you're trying to get the best out of your players, and a lot of that is man management.
Do you think there's too many people involved now in clubs? Too much behind the scenes. Whereas in your day, you had just like the manager and the assistant, maybe a couple others, but it was more of a close community or close family.
Yeah, I think it gets diluted the more people involved in it, directors of football. I understand it at the very top of the very Premier League because, you'll be sitting there and you'll be trying to highlight what you're doing in the next year and so on. But again, the football club lives and dies by the manager, the coach, the academy guys. There's a tight-knit scouts, there tended to be a tight knit. I mean, probably nowadays, I don't know how many scouts ready now, but I don't know how many academy managers you have. I think it gets a little bit disjointed somewhere that there's not that continuity all the way through. So, yes, I think there's probably too many. And I think the first team, again, I'm a big advocate for reserve team football. I don't believe that this academy system, in my eyes, this under-23 stuff works. Just my opinion. And I think reserve team football with some experienced players and some young guys brings people on far quicker.
Simon, I'll just take you back to your time at Reading when you came in. You talked about fundamentally football's the same, but obviously there's been a lot of changes with the technology and all of that sort of thing. But going back, what was it? What was your first impression? Why did you join Reading? And then when you joined Reading, just got promoted. What was your feeling about the season ahead? Obviously, that fantastic season nearly, did enough to get promoted to the Premier League. In any other season, you would have gone up, but there was a restructure. Finished second, obviously lost in the playoff final. What was your feeling about why did you make that decision to join Reading, and what was your kind of first impression about the club when you joined?
Well, I was at Palace and my contract was coming to an end. And as Colin Lee mentioned in the podcast, I played in a charity, a testimonial game at the end of the season over at Brentford. I then came back to Palace the following season. I was under the age of 23, so I wasn't a free transfer. Some discussions went on. We'd got promoted to the Premier League. I didn't play much towards the end of the season. I had a bit of a fallout with the manager. And I just felt at that particular time, I'd been at Palace since I was an apprentice. And I just felt that wanted to play more. I wanted to play every week. I wanted a manager that had a bit more trust in me. So I went across to Reading. Obviously, came across for a week or so, trained with Reading. We played a game at Whitney, I think it was. There was 2 games at a time. I then had to go back to Palace. Just got to the club. There was a feel-good factor around it. They just got promoted. The training ground was lovely. You cleaned your own kit, which was fine. There was a real, the players there, I just enjoyed it, and Colin and Mark, the way they'd spoken to me about how they saw the team, how they saw me. It just was a breath of fresh air to me. We want to sort of half build a team around you in the midfield, blah, blah, blah. We want to give you this responsibility. It was all the kind of stuff that I wanted to hear, and I just wanted to play. I could have sat at Palace and sat in the Premier League, but it just wasn't me. So came across, trained. They're desperate to get it done. I had to go back to Palace until we could agree the sort of finance side of it, and I signed the week before the season started. So it was, for me, it was the catapult again for my career to sort of re-kickstart it. And again, it was a club that were going places. I felt, obviously, the old ground, Elm Park wasn't Sellers Park or whatever, but it was an old ground. There was a feel-good factor. The players there were honest. Players like Dylan, A.D. Williams, Shaka was there. Jeff Hopkins, who I knew for Palace. So there was a real good core of some younger guys and some experienced pros who just wanted to work hard and enjoy each other company and play. And that was, for me, that was just what I wanted at the right time in my career.
Yeah. And Dylan, I want to bring you back in now. What was your first impression of Simon when he came in and knowing that you'd be playing with that sort of player in midfield? What were your first impressions of Simon?
Well, obviously, we didn't know much about Simon. I wasn't interested in teams from London. It was always Barnsley, Rotherham, Sheffield United. It was all the Yorkshire teams. So when he came, I just laughed at him. He was a cheeky little bastard. Honestly, it was fucking brilliant. Sorry, I'm swearing, but it was absolutely brilliant. And we just fucking hit it off straight on. Sorry, I'm swearing, but it was brilliant. I'd never even. I'd spoke to the guy maybe a couple of times, and we just clicked. I mean, I don't know. He probably got fed up of me chirping to him about him being a soft Southern shandy drinker. But no, it was, we just, I don't know, we just clicked. We just clicked and we're still clicking to this day. And he probably gets fed up of me, calling him and, hammering his family about being, jelly deal, mash and liquor eaters. So, but no, honestly, it was just something that I would never expected. As a player, your acquaintances, your teammates and acquaintances, as they say, you're not really friends. But he's probably in football my best friend in football, and unfortunately, I only see him once every blue moon. When I go down to London, because he's scared to go past Watford, scared to go a bit. I know the Midlands was a bit too much for him, but yeah, I mean, like I said, friends, all them years ago, and friends now, and until one of us dies, anyway.
And Dylan, what was he like as a midfield player? Because for me, it took Reading a very, very long time to replace Simon. What he brought to the team. What was it that you felt and the other players felt that Simon brought to the team?
I've got this thing of the football club's like a jigsaw, and you've got to have the right pieces to fit in the right areas. And he fitted alongside Parky. That's what made it work. Colin Lee spoke about how Parky used to play, and how we got better. Parky got better because of Ozzy, because they complemented each other, like me and Jiltsy, Scotty Taylor and Andy Bennell, Adi and Darius, Adi and Keith McPherson, Adi and Jeff Hopkins, and obviously Quinny and Archie Lovell. So we all complemented each other, and that jigsaw just kept growing. And if there was an injury, that jigsaw piece had to be taken. Another jigsaw piece had to come in, and it continued. And it's just the fact that, you know, he had the same, what's the word? He had the same energy and the love of the game, that he wanted to be on the ball and he wanted to have that ball all the time. Same with me when Gilsey had it. You know, you could see me running past Gilsey. I wasn't a left back. I'm a left winger. You know, and I would go back to past Gilsey and scream for that ball. And that's what Ozzy used to do. I mean, I used to ping balls into the corner or ping them up to Quinny, and he'd go absolutely apeshit at me. You know, because he wanted to do that. You know, he wanted to do that. And I always remember, I mean, he scored that cracking goal at Oldham. I mean, and the volley against Charlton. But the header against Wolves, for me, that was his best goal. You know, and you know, he's only 5'3" on the best of days. You know, and,
in heels, yeah, in heels.
And you know, the way he jumped that day, and basically it was the header, the technique in that header was what counted, not the goal that he scored. It was the technique. And I think it was Parky that crossed it for him. You know, Parky couldn't cross the road. He might cross a football. You know, and on that day, you know, they both, like I say, you know, Parky dinked it in, and Ozzy just a little glance into the opposite corner. And I say, you know, that enthusiasm that he had, and you know, it was a crabby bugger as well. If things weren't going right, you know, he's one of them players who would stand up in the dressing room and point the finger and say what he wanted to say. And again, you know, I don't think players, and I'm only guessing this, I don't think players in the dressing rooms now do that to other players. I don't think there's too much respect and too much niceness in that dressing room. You know, that you know, if things are going wrong, you need to tell players, you need to point fingers. We spoke about Jimmy Quinn volleying Scotty Taylor. I mean, that was a given in training. Punch-ups were a given in training. You know, you can't see that now, because if somebody punches me, then I run straight to my agent and say, you know, I want to press charges, or I want to sue him for him, you know, hitting me. It's crazy.
And Simon, before I bring Johnny back in, I just want to ask you, you know, just talk through some of your best memories of your time at Reading.
Obviously, the goals, you know, getting that the first initial goal at Barnsley away, I think it was, and just, you know, the first game of the season was a great day for us. We went up to Wolves, who were fancied, a lot of money spent on them, and to be fair, we battered them and should have won the game. Mike Stowley goal for Wolves had a great game, and they got a bit of a sort of a lucky-ish goal there. But I just enjoyed it. I love training, I love playing, and to get into that, it was just all of them were great. To be fair, most, you know, obviously the injury knocked me back a little bit for a while, but even coming back after that, we had the night at Bolton. I managed to somehow get one off the line. It might have been over. It'd be tight on bar now, I should think. But, you know, and then setting up the winner, there's little things like that. You know, Wembley to a point was great. The result obviously wasn't so, but I think we'd sort of run our race that season anyway. We've talked about that previously. So the majority of that, I enjoyed every moment of it. I didn't enjoy being injured, but again, it was time to sort of knuckle down. The boys jumped in, had done fantastic. Paul Holsgrove came in. Tom Jones played some games. So as Dylan was saying there, people jumped into it and cracked on, and we just kept going. And we were, at that time, even then, even I was injured, I was still as part of the squad. I never felt like I was out of it. I didn't feel, you know, there's other times I've been injured at other football clubs and you're kind of almost forgotten. I wasn't there, partly probably because I had to serve behind the bar and stock up and stuff like that. So I think but that was part of that as well. That was part of it. If you was injured, you served behind the bar. You stocked up the beers and you run the players' bar. You know, that was the difference. That was what we had. You know, you'd have to go and pick the beers up. You'd have to stock it up. And you'd been there afterwards serving up, and then all the boys would come in. We'd have a couple of drinks and go across the rendezvous or whatever it was, and that was part of being that squad. That was part. If you was injured, it might be me and Jeff Hopkins behind the bar, and I think people were shocked when they came in and saw us serving behind the bar. But I've grown up in my dad, you know, running non-league teams, so I've grown up in that environment. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. You know, it's just the grounding. It's a football club. The players' bar money was sort of ours, and it paid for us for a night out deal, didn't it? You know, so we'd be in there. As I said to you, being there, serve a few people at half time. At end of the game, you'd be in there for an hour till all the boys would come in and shut it up and lock up and walk back out. So it was great.
Yeah, Johnny, I want to bring you in now, but just to give you a bit of warning, if you want to think about this coming up, Simon, I do want to speak to you about Utopia, but I'm going to bring in Johnny now.
Simon, like, when you played at Reading or after you left us, who are some of the toughest players that you played against, or the best players, and you went, wow, another level?
I was fortunate to play against Gaza as a young lad at Palace. So
Right.
I was very lucky at Palace. I played against Gaza, I played against Brian Robson, Paul Ince, obviously a former manager, was a good player. You just had some players that were just. It's funny, Dylan just mentioned him. Richie Wellens was one of them players that you always played against that always did well against you. You know, you had certain players that did that. Again, we were lucky. The season obviously finished there. Merce was playing for Middlesbrough. They were a very good side that season. There's probably too many to mention, to be honest with you. But I was very, very fortunate to play against some of those players. Glenn Hoddle was my idol, and I managed to play against him. He was playing for Swindon, so. You know, to see some of those players up close, it was great. It was amazing for me to see it. Ray Wilkins, I signed for at QPR, obviously leaving Reading. Yeah. Again, another one of the guys that's sort of my idols. And I was very fortunate to play against some good players. But again, people like I said, Richie Wellens was sticking in your mind. I've got told. I think I might have been at Wolves, and I got told to mark Kincladsey. So I've done a man-to-man job on Kincladsey. I've done a man-to-man job on Lee Clark. Tim Cahill, they told me to mark. It's funny because like Colin was a big one for stuff like that, and I remember him pulling me one Friday in a training session at Wolves, and something wasn't quite working in the sort of gameplay. I can't think who it was meant to be marking Cahill, which was one of the young lads. He went away and scored, and they stopped the session. And then Colin calls me over and basically spoils my weekend by going, "You follow Tim Cahill wherever he goes. I don't care if you don't play the whole game. So you play a game, we get a result. He says, well done, but you just feel like you've had a shit Saturday, really, because you haven't really done a lot." But as I said to you do it for the team. That's the whole point of it. You do it for the team.
And do you think that's kind of gone now? Players are a bit more about themselves. That sometimes teams are struggling, especially players don't have that. Like you had with Dylan and the team, that team spirit that you really pulled it together when you needed to.
Yeah, because I think if we were going through a little bit of a rough time or some things needed to be aired, with the greatest respect, we'd get together on a Tuesday afternoon, as Dylan's talked about, and it probably leads on to Utopia. We'd sit and have a bit of lunch somewhere in the George at Pangbourne and have a bite to eat and have a chat and a couple of beers and meet in town. And if there was anybody that had something to air it, get it out in the open. If somebody's got a problem with somebody or somebody's not pulling their weight, we'd get it out in the open. We'd get it out in the open and have a little chat about it. It wouldn't get, the frustrations be on the training field. This wouldn't, we'd never went to blows and in Utopia. I might have seen a couple of the boys in the mosh pit, but that's about it. But yeah, we'd just have a chat, get over it, and then crack on to the next game. And it worked well that season.
And Simon, just wanted to ask you about Utopia because it's sort of a legendary. I mean, I used to go to Utopia. I never went on the Tuesday nights, but it's for anyone of a certain age who sort of was in Reading. Utopia was a big deal for a Friday or a Saturday night, and of course it had some sort of legendary status for the Reading team as well, didn't it? Tuesday nights. Tell us about some of your funniest memories, if you like, of Utopia.
Well, like I said, it was I think it was student night, it was Tuesday night, so it was like £1 a pint. And we'd Pangbourne, we'd have a couple of drinks, we'd park up myself and Dill maybe. I'd stay in curtains at certain times before I got my flat. And we'd have a couple of drinks there, maybe a game of snooker, and then we'd end up meet the boys in town, TGI's, wherever it was, we'd have a few beers, and then it'd just lead on. And not everybody would make Utopia, but the majority of us younger lads did. So we'd always end up in there a little bit later on in the night. It was it was student, it was great. We'd have a laugh. And like I said, I remember the one evening we'd stand up top and you could sort of look down onto the sort of dance floor. And obviously I'd be at the bar because I'd have to buy Dylan his drinks because he's quite tight from coming up north. So I'd be stuck at the bar. That's the only reason I'd be at it, buying his drinks. So and you sort of have a look down, and then we had, I think it was three lads. I think it was James Lambert, Scotty Taylor, and Archie Lovell were jumping around in the mosh pit, basically elbowing students in the head, bouncing around on the back of that, literally elbowing people in the head. And you're looking down, going, it's Tuesday night. They've trained all day, and it's like we've got a game Saturday. I hope they don't get injured. And doing that, so there was things like that. I remember having a full blown row with Mr. Medeski at Utopia upstairs. Prior to all the boys, because obviously there was a lot of lads out of contract and we'd had a couple of drinks ourselves. I can't remember what game, it might have been after a game. And I remember we sort of saying, "Are you going to sort the lads out and keep this team together?" And me and him having a bit of a stand-up row upstairs. But next time I saw him, he was good as gold. But he didn't take any notice. He still sold us all anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, Dylan, bring you back in now. I mean, that was such a fantastic time to be a Reading fan. And as you've talked about many times, you know, that team you were in. But what else do you remember about, you know, yourself and Simon, you know, on the pitch and off the pitch? What are some of your favourite memories with Simon in mind?
No, just like I said, we just clicked. We love playing football. We love playing for Reading Football Club, and it worked for us, you know. And you knew what you were going to get from Ozzy. You know, if he had a bad game, you couldn't see it. You couldn't see it. I'm not just saying this because he's on, you know. Even though he just hammered me. And by the way, when he went to the bar, he bought me a pint and he got a lemonade shandy, you know, a lemonade tops. But
that's because I was an athlete. That's because I was an athlete.
No question of life. You Parkinson and Hopkins, you know, the plant feeders. I mean, you know. But like I said, I became really, really good friends with. Obviously, I was dating Rachel, and I've never mentioned her. I haven't mentioned her name in years. I'll call you back just now. I'm on a podcast. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. And me and Billy, Rachel and Ozzy used to hang around all the time as much as we could. And you know, Ozzy will tell you that, you know, when Take That were obviously very, very big, they did a cover of Could It Be Magic, I think Barry Manilow's song. And me and Billy had this crazy dance routine, which was just hilarious. And we actually performed it at her wedding, you know, and it ended up like, you know, we had to be on his knees and we did like, you know, these rollovers, and we just had this, you know, we just had this energy together. We loved being around each other more than any of the other players. You know, obviously Parky and Suzanne didn't go out much. Jeff and Debbie didn't go out much. Shaka and Desha, they came out, you know. But me and Ozzy, Billy and Rachel, we used to, especially me and Ozzy, whenever we could go out, we went out.
Dylan, who's Billy? Tell us who Billy is.
His wife.
Okay, right, got you.
He's very, very lucky that he married her, by the way. No, I know she had a secret fantasy for me, you know, but.
Well, I think, I don't know if you said something, but we seem to have temporarily lost Simon, so hopefully he'll come back. Let me ask you both. I'll start with you, Johnny, and then I'll ask the same question to you, Dylan, and hopefully we'll get Simon back. Johnny, do you think, you know, what do you think the chances are now of this going to the last game of the season, or do you get the feeling that Huddersfield are going to do what they need to do against Sheffield United on Thursday?
First thing is, I've never been to Utopia, and I'm very jealous.
Oh, you've missed out.
I missed out big time.
Yeah,
They could come back. And the football-wise, I'll be positive and I hope and until it's a definite no, you know. And if Sheffield United can get a result, and then we go to the next game and we hope for the best. It's like if it's done on Thursday, then it's over. The funeral begins as such. But until it's out of the window, I won't give up hope. But yeah, like it's we got this point now, and it's hard work. It's sad, isn't it? But
Mark,
John,
sorry,
I'll bring Dylan back in. Dylan, do you want to just say you got to go now, haven't you? So what do you think?
You've got to WhatsApp this number you've got to WhatsApp the link to this number. Ozzy's phone's died. He's got another phone.
Oh, okay.
Can you?
Yeah. So, do you want to send me the number?
Do you want me to tell you it now, or do you want me to?
Just send it to me.
Okay, perfect. I'll do it now.
So, Johnny, my gut feeling is I think it's going to be all over on Thursday. Do you think it's a culmination of you know, everything that's happened over the last few years?
Yeah, I think we just run out of luck. We've had a few years where we've got lucky, you know, different things, you know, end of season runs, and last season obviously that points deduction, and then the 6 points. The 6-point deduction this time just really finished us off, isn't it? Without that, we'd be safe.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's horrible. It's horrible to see, but we've had it coming. Unfortunately, I think most people would agree. You'd hope that we get through it, but it's there, and it's I remember I used to.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I remember the last day at Elm Park when we went down last time.
Yeah. Well, listen, Johnny, I know you're juggling your childcare, so we're trying to bring Simon back in, but I'll come to you now, Dylan. What do you think the consequences will be for Reading if they do get relegated this season?
Financially, it's going to be a disaster. The academy will probably suffer. As Ozzy said, you'd rather have a reserve team than an under-23 team. This under-23 team doesn't work. If you're not a professional footballer about 18, 19, 20 at a push, then you're not going to make a professional footballer. You might be one out of 100 might make it, but there's players that should be playing regular football in the reserves that are not in the squad, that are coming back from injury, and they don't get that opportunity. We have the same thing here it's called DDC, where it's under 23, and it's ridiculous that most of the players are 22, 23 years old and have got no chance of getting professional contracts. But it's how football works in this country with agents and players and chairmen, that they do this in this way. But I think from a supporter's point of view, it's going to be devastating for Reading Football Club. I've got a very, very close friend, Jason, and I can't remember his surname right now, who was kind of semi-related to Rachel when we were married.
Oh, Simon's back. Here he is.
Sorry, fellas, my other phone died. I do apologise.
And he's already said to me, if Reading go down, he's going to come back. He's going to come back and watch Reading, because he said he got fed up of watching, rubbish games. He got fed up with the way the club were, in the direction the club were going. And he was a big Reading fan, and he stayed away for a few years because he wasn't enjoying it. And I think that's going to be the big catastrophe for Reading Football Club is the supporters, and how it affects them.
And it feels like a different club in a way. Certainly to your time, to Simon's time at Reading. Obviously, what Sir John Madejski did took the club to a different level, and it does feel like a different club in a way. And I think a lot of fans feel that they need to get their identity back. Simon, welcome back. We wondered actually if you'd left because Dylan started talking about Billy, your wife. And,
okay.
We thought you might have been offended. You didn't hear everything he said, I don't think.
No, probably not. I'll listen back to it. If there's anything offensive, she'll sort him out, mate. I don't need to worry about myself.
Well, look,
honestly,
do you feel that whether it's Championship or League One next season, do you feel it's all about getting that identity back, Simon?
Yeah, as I spoke about earlier, it's getting that togetherness back again. I feel that it's very disjointed and very detached at the moment. I don't think the fans, as Dylan was saying there, that some people are staying away because they're not enjoying it. There's been many conversations about, would you like to see your side in the Premiership losing every week? I don't know. Fans want to be. It's a release. Fans want to be entertained. Fans want to go a Saturdays or a Tuesday night's a release. It's the build up. It's part of taking the dad or the son, or it's getting together with a group of friends that you go to football with. It's a social event, and that will never change. But when it gets to a point where it becomes a little bit poisoned or a little bit, people are not enjoying that, it affects them. It affects them during the week. They then don't want to go on a Saturday because it affects their mood. They're not going to watch. People always will go to a game, and if they see their team having a go, trying hard, if their quality is not quite there, or they're just losing by the odd goal or something, or a lot of injuries, they'll stick with the team. They will stick with the team. They're not going to change. They're not going to go from Reading and all of a sudden start supporting Oxford because it's around the corner and they're winning. That's not going to happen. They just want to go to a game, and as I said to you, they'll cut the pints beforehand, chat about the game. Even if they go away and something's happened and it's been a draw or it's been an entertaining game, they'll have those couple of pints afterwards And that makes their Saturday or makes their Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Friday night or Saturday afternoons and evening, whatever it is now you play. And that's the talking point for a couple of days. And it gets people through, gets them through the weekends, gets them through life sometimes even. And when they're not enjoying going to football matches and not enjoying the team playing with some effort and endeavour and feel like the football club is not part of them, they will stay away. And again, people stay away by talking with their feet, don't they? They don't come.
Yeah. And Simon, I was asking Johnny and Dylan earlier, your gut feeling, do you think that it could well all be over on Thursday when Huddersfield play Sheffield United? Is that what you think? Or do you think it will go to the last game?
I think it'll go to the last game. I think Sheffield United will beat Huddersfield. I do think that. The only thing is that obviously with Sheffield United being up or whatever it is, there's that tendency that they could switch off. I don't think they will, personally, but I think it will go to the last game of the season.
Yeah,
in my head. But it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm just saying this because of Warnock. The Warnock factor, obviously old club Sheffield United, Neil's at Huddersfield doing really well. There's that possibility that he will, he'll get a result.
Yeah, okay. Johnny, I'll bring you back in now. Have you got one last question for Simon before we let him go?
Jeez.
Don't put me under pressure.
No.
Johnny, don't put me under pressure.
No, I just think, where do you see, if you're, what can Reading do? I guess team-wise, what do they need in League One? What's the difference between Championship, League One, playing-wise, squad-wise, mentality-wise? Is it a huge drop?
It's obviously I've done that with Walsall and dropped down, and it's tough. What I think you need a core. You need as we're talking about, you need a core. Dylan will talk about it, and you build teams through the core. You need a good core of experience, goalkeeper, 2 centre halves, midfield. You need that core. You need a core of people that play in that division because there's a lot of games come thick and fast.
Yeah.
Same as the Championship, and it's a tough league to get out of. So you need that core, and then you need a little sprinkling of some younger guys in there because they're going to give you some excitement. You're going to do that, but you do need 1 or 2 little star players. You need somebody that's going to get you goals. Look at Wrexham. We're talking about Parky obviously because of what he is. You've got the best 2 centre forwards in that league. It doesn't, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out you score goals, you're going to win games.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that Wrexham have got what they are. I think Mullin's got 40 plus goals again this season. It makes a difference, but you need identity. You want a team that are reflective of the manager. So you want a high intensity team. You want a fit, organised, disciplined team that are going to go out there and every single game, win or lose, are going to be consistent. And I think consistency is the key in any division, isn't it? If you look at the teams that are consistent and have the know-how and have the little bits of spring, the odd lone player in from a Premiership that gives you a little bit of a buzz here and there, I think that's the sort of thing you've got to look at. And again, you'll get the odd academy guy that will come in potentially, or a younger player that comes in and excites, doesn't he? But it's a tough league. The leagues below the Premiership are tough leagues to get out of. They're not easy. You've obviously got the teams that yo-yo up and down between the Premiership and then the League One teams. And as you're looking at it now, those same sort of teams are in and around the fight, in and around the promotion places year in, year out, and it's a tough league.
Yeah, and Dylan, I want to bring you in for one last question for Simon.
No, I ain't.
Hang on, 2 seconds.
Oh, Dylan's sorting out his Maroon Gallants team for the next game, I think. So Simon, I'll ask Dylan.
I think he's on the phone to his agent. He's got a new move. He's got to move to Reading.
He's been watching this.
Yeah, Paul. Mark Bowen's maybe on the phone to him now, but we'll see. Simon, what do you think the future holds for Reading now? Obviously, you've got a connection with the club, as you have with other clubs, Wolves included, of course. But I know that Reading, you've got a special place in your heart for Reading, haven't you? What do you, a bit like Johnny asked you earlier, what do you see the future looking like for Reading? 3, 4, 5 years into the future.
I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get it back to where it is. Yes, I've got an affinity for them because I felt that at the time in my career, as I talked about earlier, it springboarded me back to where I really want to be. I just think that they now need to make a conscious decision of which way they want to go. And instill that from academy right the way through into the first team there. Which way, what are we looking at? Are we going to go with a Noel? Is that the way we're going to go with a manager and stick with it? And stick with it and give him the opportunity to build a team, build a squad, build a football club again, really, because you're kind of almost going back to the foundations and the fundamentals of what the fans want to see. You're going to rebuild that football club. You're going to re-engage with the supporters. You want to get that, you want to get that feel-good factor between both of them. And again, once you get that, and as I said to you, the fans are not, they're going to moan. They're going to do what they're going to do. But if they see that you're giving it the effort, they can see a clear direction in the football club, and the players giving it their all. And if you decide to play 11 young players, they'll probably stick with you. But they just need to understand it, because at the moment, I think they're a little bit the blind leading the blind, if that makes sense. And I don't think they actually know what the football club's long-term future is, what their philosophy is, what's the transfer policy. Are we looking to bring players in? Are we going to be a feeder club for others? What is it? Does anybody really know? I don't think they do. And I think that's the biggest problem with it, because there's too many grey areas there. And supporters, players, anybody always looks for grey. Black and white's easy. The grey is always the difficult part.
Yeah, and Dylan, bring you in if you finish chatting to your agent about your next move. I'd like to bring you back in for the last question for Simon.
No, like I say, it's if I got the opportunity, I'd bring Ozzy in just because of his infectious personality. Not that he'd come now because he's got a great job and he's happy doing what he's doing. But like he's saying about the identity, like he's saying about the fans not knowing what's black, what's white, what's grey, what's red and green. They don't know what blue and white is at the moment. They don't know what that banner behind you represents. And you need a squad of players. I'm old school. I've got to be old school because I played back in the day when football was was enjoyable to play in. You weren't under the media pressure that players are under now. The VAR wasn't there, which is a disaster, as I always tweet. I don't like it, but you need. I agree with that, Ozzy. He needs an identity. The club needs an identity, and you need whoever gets the job. They've got to bring the right people into the club that's going to mirror what the manager or the head coach, as they call now, wants. The club have got to give the opportunity for that coach to implement what he thinks is right for the club with the players that he's got, and the players that he wants to recruit, and get the young players back in. We spoke about this a long time ago, Johnny, about I think it was like 5 or 6 games ago, when Ince was in trouble, that he needed to put in some young players and some fresh players and fresh legs. That scares the hell out of senior players. They don't want to not be playing. And if you get your position taken by a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, then you're in trouble. And that gives you a bit of a kick in up the backside to start to play better. And I think that's where, whether they stay up or go down, and I agree with Ozzy, I think it's going to be a cracker of a game at the John Smith Stadium. I think it's called the John Smith Stadium now, but at Huddersfield Town. And I know that Reading fans hate Neil Warnock, and I think Neil Warnock hates Reading fans. So it's going to be an absolute great game. I hope it's not decided on Thursday. But again, Neil Warnock doesn't like Sheffield United as well, so he'll probably be... and obviously, he didn't like Cardiff as well.
Oh, and Dylan, your lights have got off. You haven't paid your electric bill again.
He's got to put 50 back in that meter. Put 50. Oh, can I ask a quick question to Dylan?
Yeah, go on. He's in the dark.
Are you back, Dylan? Put your 50 pence in your meter from your TV from Rumbelows. Huh?
Oh my! I don't think you'll be. Are you still? Am I still on? Because
we can see you look like a ghost. But go on.
Yeah, Dylan, if you had the opportunity right now, this is a question for you now, and Reading came to you and offered you a job, would you take it?
Oh, in a heartbeat. And I would take it, Ozzy, because what I've learned here in this country, it's insignificant, from European football on every level. The things I have to deal with, the problems I have to do and take charge of. It's been a massive learning curve, and the thing I've proved to myself and proved to the clubs that I've worked from, as Mark said, since 2014, when I started in Vietnam, you know, I get my players to play. I get my players to enjoy coming to work. I get my players going home knowing that they've done something and knowing that they're going to come the next morning and do the same thing. And, you know, it's repeat. And there's so much, like you said about pro licenses and A licenses, there's so much video analysis now. There's iPad coaches, as they're called, that think they know the game on an iPad, but when they're on the field, they haven't a clue what they're doing. You know, I'm a strong believer in five-a-side, small-sided games, one touch, two touch. I'm a strong believer in getting, as we were at Reading, we come to training, we loved it. We loved it. Whether Colin was taking it or Dingus, Matt McGee, Dingus, I can't believe I called him that. Matt McGee was playing the five-a-sides, and he was, well, I think you were the last pick. Dingus was the second last pick in the five-a-sides. That's what you got to do. And I don't think, and we spoke about it before on previous podcasts, I don't think that's happening. I think players now get overcoached. Players get trapped in this thing. Well, Queen's Park Rangers play this way, and Blackpool play this way, and Sheffield United play this way. Screw them. You know, it's what we do. We never worried about opposition. We never did a video analysis on opposition. But Colin Lee made sure that we were in sync, you know, with everybody come Thursday and Friday, or against the opposition that we were playing. You know, and we grew from that, and we developed from that, and we got better and better and better. Unfortunately, the playoff final, you know, killed that momentum, and the club kind of took a couple of backward steps after that, after what we'd built in them 2 seasons. So I doubt if I'll be even interviewed or I'll be even asked, Ozzy, if I'm honest. But you can never say never.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah, true.
Well, listen, Simon, thanks ever so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on. Thanks to Johnny. Thanks to Dylan. Good luck, Dylan. And on tomorrow's episode, we're joined by Reading's all-time top appearance maker, Martin Hicks, tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we're joined by Trevor Senior. So just leaves me to say thank you to Dylan, to Johnny, and of course to Simon. Thanks very much, Simon.
Cheers, everyone.